Get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's session. Self-care is not selfish, prioritizing your well-being. It is Self-Care Awareness Month. And so SoundMinds Awareness, Mental Health Awareness and Solutions Conference wanted to host this conversation. We actually started it at our conference in July earlier this year. The different title, it was different people, but we do have the people actually here tonight were involved in different capacities, but we definitely wanted to continue this conversation with this being Self-Care Awareness Month. And so through authentic, transparent conversations with heart-selected mental health professionals, advocates, and people with lived experience who genuinely care about our community, we have conversations in our conference so that we can change the way mental health is shaped and shared in Black and Hispanic communities. SoundMinds Conference is committed to creating conversations that educate Black and Hispanic communities about mental health and its impact on families, communities, and us individually, right, as well as our personal physical health. And so we help erase stigmas and increase understanding about loved ones dealing with mental health challenges and living with diagnosed mental illnesses. We also increase advocacy by helping us learn how to support and advocate for one another as well as ourselves individually. And we encourage a collaborative care approach that includes both mental and physical health care to improve our overall health. And so, in celebration of National Self-Care Awareness Month, we're hosting this dynamic virtual panel discussion to explore the transformative power of self-care and its impact on mental health and overall well-being. My name is TANYA Simmons-Reid. I am the visionary and executive producer of the SoundMinds Mental Health Awareness and Solutions Conference. I'm also a nationally certified mental health first aider and president and CEO of Skyrocket Communications. And I just want to give a shout out because I do believe that what we do in our communities is so important. And I'm also a volunteer for the Senior Law Center. I recently accepted a board position, and I just want to give them a shout out for the work that they're doing to advocate for our older community on local, state, and national levels, because that is very, very important. So I just had to do that there. And it's so interesting because today, I was thinking just about self-care in general as we were leading up to tonight. And there's so many different definitions of what is self-care. And I hear people say, oh, it's self-care, I'm going to get my nails done. Well, the salon does not make me comfortable. My anxiety is on 10. People are talking and it's busy, and they're there. It seems like sometimes, depending on where you go, they're like all these different cultural different. It's just a lot for me. It's not a place where I would go and just woo-saw and have a moment. But we're going to talk about that tonight. So I want to get into this. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Any comments, please put them in the chat. We like when the chat is popping because your voice does matter. And we will make sure that we bring your comments to this virtual stage. You'll also have a time at the end to turn your camera on, and we could bring you up with our panelists and you can personally ask your questions. So again, I'm excited about tonight. I want to introduce our panelists so we can get this conversation started. Our first panelist who I want to bring up is Joe Woods. Joe Woods is a self-care activist. He's also a business leader and mental health advocate. Joe's an accomplished author, leadership consultant, coach, and former college athlete with over 20 years of experience in leadership development. He holds his degrees in psychology and educational leadership of organization, which has equipped him with a deeper understanding of the human psyche and how it impacts leadership development. So let's bring Joe on up with us. Hi, Joe.
Hey Tanya, how you doing how you doing this
Um,
afternoon?
I'm good. Good to have you here. Good to have you here to talk about self-care. You're definitely someone who I hear talk about it often, and it always impacts me and others in the room. So
Appreciate
we
it.
look
Thank you.
forward to you sharing.
Looking
Anything you
forward.
want to add before we bring on our next panelist? You
No,
ready?
ma'am, just looking forward to the opportunity to share about my journey about self-care and how it's helped me to navigate through life continually. So,
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much.
mhm.
Next up is Danielle Young. Danielle Young. Yes, she is amazing as well. I told you you're gonna hear me say amazing many times tonight, so just bear with me. But it's so true, and I hope that you agree when we finish this conversation. Danielle is a Prince George County, Maryland native. So she's from Maryland. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Family Studies from the University of Maryland, College Park, and a Master of Social Work degree in Clinical Social Work from the University of Maryland, Baltimore. She's a licensed behavioral health therapist and mental health and wellness advocate practicing in Maryland as well as the DC metropolitan area. Danielle currently provides therapeutic services at Advanced Behavioral Health, located in Greenbelt, Maryland, services for Prince George's County Youth First Care Community Schools program. And she is also the host of the Advanced Behavioral Health podcast entitled Making a Difference in Mental Health. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Tanya.
Always good to see you as well. And I know how you
Thank you
feel
so
about
much.
self-care.
I do. Yes, I'm excited for the conversation tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, our third panelist for tonight for this conversation about self-care is not selfish is none other than Monica Yvonne. Drum roll, please. Monica is the founder and mastermind behind Brains, Beauty, Brilliance, a movement designing freedom in everyday life. She helps individuals strategically embrace opportunities of life in freedom that Yahweh's love brings. Yes, that Yahweh's love brings. Monica is transparent about her battle of mental health when she lost her father. Her experience stirred fire to help others maneuver through mental health challenges while processing grief. She's a certified mental health first aider and the curator of My Truth About Grief. And she is a leadership team member of the SoundMinds Mental Health Conference. And so we're always happy to have Monica. She's sitting in a different seat today as a panelist because we value her experience and her expertise in this area of self-care. So let's get the conversation started, everybody. You all want to say hi to each other? I feel like, I like to pretend we're actually in a real room, right? So,
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
This is
but
going to be an
yes,
awesome conversation.
it is much needed, like I shared at the beginning. If you don't, please make sure you have a pen and pad, your smart device, whatever it is near you, to take some notes for yourself. Make a commitment to at least have 3 takeaways that you're going to leave this conversation with tonight so that you can love on yourself better than you did today. So here we go. Let's get started. Let's get this conversation started. So my first question, I want to talk about the fact that self-care can often be misunderstood or misrepresented. Like I was sharing earlier about the nail salon. Some people think that's self-care. What do you all believe is the biggest misconception people have about self-care, especially in communities where mental health is really overlooked? So it's a free-for-all. Whoever wants to jump in, let's go.
I can go first. I would say self-care is self-confrontation. It's easily misconstrued with massages and nail care and physical pampering. But self-care sometimes is doing stuff that you don't like to do or you may not want to do in the moment so you can get to being better for yourself. I think also while we say self-care is for the self, we do self-care on behalf of other people. So I'm going to take care of myself for my kids. I'm going to take care of myself for my marriage. I'm going to take care of myself so I can be a better self. But the truth is sometimes when you're starting self-care, you have everybody on your mind except for you. So you end up taking care of you for other people without you still being the main priority or the number one reason why you take care of yourself. And so I always say self-care is self-confrontation, because you will look at yourself in the mirror and see what you have capacity to progress on. And that's healing your mental, that's healing your soul, and that's also getting to know yourself. What do you like? What do you not like? And also learning where to put the boundary in, where you can say a 2-letter word, N-O, no, which is no in multiple languages.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, yes, to add to what Monica said, for me, also self-care is doing inventory on yourself. Oftentimes what I tell my clients sometimes is the very things that we deposit, as Monica already said, into people, into the community, those very things that we deposit, those things can also deplete us. So you might be a good leader, you might be a mother and a wife, you might be a teacher, you might be a president of a company, and those things that add to that particular community, you're depleting yourself or you're pouring out yourself. And we often say, you can't pour from an empty cup. So when that cup either is empty or it's running a little bit low, this is a time where you do a self-inventory. Okay, where are there depletions and where do I need to restock? And taking that time for the restock is very important for yourself. So then if your personality or your temperament or even your character is to be a server or a servant through your gifts, through your talents, you still have to be refilled. So for me, it's taking an inventory of yourself.
Well, I have to agree with what everyone is saying on the
something.
panel thus far. And I think about, there's a great quote by Sherilyn Kenyon, and she talks about how sometimes things have to go wrong in order for them to go right. And then sometimes on the journey of self-care, sometimes things have to go wrong for us in order to begin to take care of ourselves in that process. As was spoken to earlier about boundaries, knowing how to say no, that's a part of that self-care component. And then knowing how to show up for others, because self-care is about me improving myself in order to have better relationships with others, to understand during this journey of my frustrations, my anxieties, or those things that are bothering me at those times. That's what self-care brings us to, an awareness of ourselves. And in the process of us learning to become aware of ourselves, we're able to be better for others during this journey of our self-care for ourselves. So I don't look at it as being selfish. As the slide marked that through, that's correct. It's something that we need to do holistically for ourselves. It's all encompassing. Everyone has talked about it. Self-care is a very encompassing word, from our emotional to our mental and our physical state of being, and all the things that make us humans as it is. So that's what I think about self-care. It's an all-encompassing aspect of who we are as humans.
Woo! Look, you all, that was just the first question, right? So good. And I think, Danielle, you stepped on our toes too, or at least my personal toes, when you talked about, the whole part of being a server or a servant, right? Because there's a lot of pressure in that, and in serving, where we can leave ourselves depleted because we need to serve ourselves first, right? And that's not a negative. Sometimes people see that as, oh, you're so into yourself and da-da-da. No, I think those boundaries, like you talked about, Joe, are vital. And then Monica, whoo, that word no, no, no.
Right.
And it's funny because that is a word that every culture, every language understands. You can say no in any country and they know what no means. So, but do we say it? So anyway, let's keep it going. Remember, the chat is open. Put your comments or your questions in the chat. We're talking about self-care tonight. Our title is Self-Care is Not Selfish, Prioritizing Your Well-Being. So Joe, this next one is for you. As a self-care activist, and I do see you as an activist, that's a big word, right? But you are, listen to what you just shared, and the fact that you are intentional and committed to self-care and helping others execute and take care of themselves. So what inspired your personal journey toward prioritizing self-care, and how has it changed the way you live and you work?
Well, I think my journey began about 7 to 8 years ago, Tanya, when I was reading bedtime stories to my son. And as we would do bedtime stories every night, he would come up with these great adventures about this cat and this hamster. And so we would take him on this vivid imaginatory run throughout the universe, whatever we could come up with. We just took this cat and this hamster to any kind of journey we could. But there was one night after we told our bedtime story about this cat and this hamster, I was lying on the floor and I immediately got up. And once I got up, I began to feel my heart begin to jump out of my chest. And I felt very, very faint. And I yelled out to my wife, I needed help. And I thought I was having a heart attack. And at that moment, we had to go to the emergency room and come to find out I was having a major panic attack. And not only did I have it that one night, I had it several other times before, but I didn't really understand what I was dealing with until this nurse pulled me to the side and said, do you know what anxiety is? I'm like, nah, not really. I played sports, so I'm just used to dealing with things. And asked me about a panic attack. And that's what happened. I had a panic attack. And that began my course of anxiety, understanding how to deal with anxiety and deal with myself. And so now how did I become an advocate? I took that same story about that cat and that hamster, my son and we've created these different children's books about how we can battle emotions as kids. Because as I look at us as adults, chemicals in our body don't know our age. Chemicals are what chemicals are. Neurotransmitters are what neurotransmitters are. And how we react and how we respond to things, we just could be older children responding to the same situations and causing burnout. As we talked about that self-care component earlier, that's understanding when you're burning yourself out as well. How long have you been running high on cortisol levels? So that began my journey of self-care and also being an advocate for self-care to try to make sure that I start at the earlier ages, because sometimes, as Frederick Douglass talks about, it's hard to change an adult, but it's easier to change children than adults sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I had to begin to go back now to look at the children, understand some of the things that we dealt with as children that we still deal with as adults. And that's that part of being an advocate for self-care, because I understand one thing, that we still take a lot of things personal. How do I begin to help us to deal with our stories about taking things personal? How do I begin to help us all understand about owning our own emotions, right? That's a part of that self-care piece as well. And then how do I begin to talk to us about doing something different in life? That is going to seek counseling, going to seek help, talk therapy, whatever therapy we need to do as adults to help us to begin to navigate and help us to reassure our self-care. So that was my journey to becoming a self-care advocate. And that's what I do through my children's books, to go into different after-school programs or the daycares, and just showing and creating animation series about how these characters handle emotional situations and not let them emotional situations control them. And that's what I'm doing now currently, as even for myself. My journey of self-care has just begun and is still beginning. Things I took the time out of my life that was mandatory that I had to do for myself, because I couldn't show up for others if I couldn't show up for myself. So.
And I think that's cool, because what you're saying is even your gift in storytelling with the children's series is an outlet for you.
Correct.
You know, you're learning through that process, and it's helping you help others. So thank you for sharing that. Before we end, I definitely want you to put the link in so we can all learn more about your books, because I think that's amazing. So congratulations on that. My next question is for you, Monica. With the whole movement you're doing with the Brains, Beauty, Brilliance, it's emphasizing holistic well-being, which Joe actually referenced earlier in our conversation tonight. So what unique challenges do you think women, particularly Black and Hispanic, because that's the focus with SoundMinds, face when it comes to self-care, and how can our community address those challenges?
I call it the struggle of the strong one. And the reason why I call the challenge the struggle of the strong one is because I believe it's in the blood, literally the bloodline of African American and Hispanics, to be strong, to be resilient. What other choice do we have when it comes to the challenges we face, even in maternal health, getting doctors to understand the sensitivity of Black women when we give birth? And advocating for ourselves. But in this, we have a strength because sometimes male or Black men are not present in the household, or men, even for Hispanic, they're not present in the household because maybe you're not a nuclear family. Maybe you had a teenage pregnancy. Maybe you lost your spouse or your partner to gun violence or to drug violence, or they're incarcerated. There's many different things that require us to have to be strong in the face of all odds. But at birth, the first thing we come into is a world that tells us we can't because of discrimination and because of racism. So that's the first thing we face, even though inside of us is everything is we can. And the fight is always not for the seat at the table, but to say, I belong here. Like at birth, I belong here. I belong to live in this world. I belong to have the rights that everyone else's have. I belong to have the same access, and I belong to even have the same kind of responsibilities. But sometimes it even comes out of patriarchal systems where you may be the oldest. You may be in the middle. So then if you're the oldest, sometimes you got stuck raising your siblings and you had the responsibility of that. Or because you may be the middle child or you may have been the baby, you might have got stuck raising nieces and nephews, or you might have had the responsibility of raising your parents because you were the last generation and everybody else had something going on. And so you had to have this responsibility that might have been put at you at our age or at a time that was not appropriate, but that was still the cards that you were dealt. And so when I think about the pressure and the role of self-care is the ability to take off the layers of strength so that you for others to put on the layers of strength for you, because you end up projecting so much of what everyone else needs, because it could be your parents and it could be your family that's telling you, you have to do this so we can survive, because everyone else is being selfish and they're not taking into account that your survival is just as important as their survival. And so the role that self-care plays is, number one, I am worthy. I am worthy. I don't want to continue to raise up my hand and say, but what about me? I don't want to live in a space of resentment and bitterness because you got to live your dream. But then I came back and looked at myself and I didn't have anything left for me. And so while you say you praise me and you love me, auntie, TT, godmom, best friend, wife, all the roles that we have as women, or black man, I see you, or black queen, go ahead, or all the different cultural things that we say. But at the end of the day, you don't have anything. And so self-care, sometimes, like Joe said, it starts at a journey where you hit a rock bottom. It may start at the journey of you snapped and went off of everybody and said, get out of my house. Or it could have been you just left everything, packed your bags and went away and lost all kind of contact. And so for me, in managing the pressure of Brains Beauty Brilliance of leading a community, it is, number one, I will not be fraudulent. I am not going to tell you to do something that I'm not going to do. And so for me, that journey is I started putting things on social media as accountability for myself. Is that my social media page helps other people, but that's not the reason for it. The reason why I do it is 100% for me, because it keeps me accountable of doing what I say that I'm going to do. And my self-care journey started because I grieved my father, and I had a life coach tell me, well, what are you doing for you? And I couldn't tell what I was doing for you, what I was doing for me, because I was doing it for my mom, taking care of her. And this person needed me, and ministry was here, and I have to preach and I have to teach and I have to do all of that. But what was my preaching and teaching if my soul was dying and if my spirit was just at a burnt crisp? And
That's
so I
good,
manage that.
Monica.
So I manage that pressure it's me, and I show up for me first. So every Saturday is self-care Saturday. I show up for everyone, but
Oh, we're
I
gonna get
make
into that,
sure
Monica. We just getting started. We just started. We just getting started. We want to hear all of that, and all of that in a bag of chips. I do want to ask you though, from what you said, some points that we can take, because I want us to have some takeaways. And and our whole thing with Sound Minds is around advocacy as well. And so as far as what the community, what you believe, because everything you said is so valuable, like the struggle of the strong one, being resilient, and that whole survival part, right? Like you said your survival is just as important as their survival, right? And a lot of times we do put other people's survival before ours, or we think if they survive, we'll be good. And we're not, right? We're not. So what can our community do to better support women, Black and Hispanic women, who are feeling this struggle of the strong one? What can I do, even though I'm my own woman, right? But what can I do to help you? or to help Danielle, or to, as far as, or any other women on this, in this conversation tonight, right now, listening at the replay, what can I do? What can we individually do to help Black and Hispanic women who face these challenges when it comes to self-care and being intentional about it?
Ask the question. Ask your sister, ask your friend, ask that woman, that the Black woman, the Hispanic woman, hey, not just are you okay, how are you taking care of yourself? Don't leave it to be a yes or no. Ask the open-ended question. How are you taking care of yourself?
Mm-hmm. That's good. The open-ended question, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, you all. This is good. This is good. Danielle, it's your turn. You are our licensed mental health professional on the virtual stage tonight. And, I'm sure as a professional therapist, you've heard many stories of people struggling to incorporate self-care. So what are some of the common barriers that people face when trying to practice self-care? And how do you believe they can overcome them? What are some ways?
First, I want to say I appreciate Joe's story. I wanted to say hallelujah and amen to Monica. Because Monica has tapped into a couple of things that I have worked on with a couple of colleagues. One of our most recent presentations down here in DC was taking off the cape. So Monica, you should have been a panelist at that particular conference, because we spoke to we spoke to women of color when it comes to, listen, we're super women. Some of us want to take off the cape. Some of us don't have the luxury of taking it off and retiring the cape. And some of us just want to throw that cape away, burn it, just being able to address our mental health. But when it comes to the challenges of addressing mental health, it really, what I notice in a lot of clients and then within the community, it is about balance, but it's about like 3 different categories of balance. So it's about personal life balance, professional life balance, and community balance. And a lot of times we can find ourselves giving 100% to all. And as I said before, the deposits that we make to all, we leave none for ourselves. We're depleted. But also research, and then what I've just discovered over the course of practice, is that there are a lot of lived experiences, learned behaviors. Monica's already talked about that ancestral DNA that, some of us just had to do it because grandma did it, big mama did it, and those that came along before. It's just in your DNA to be able to make $1 out of 15 cents. It's in your DNA to take the scraps of the food from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and somehow or another, make it a Friday night, Saturday night stretch meal is what I call it. Make it a stew. You might've had a roast in the beginning, and now at the end of the week, it's a stew. It's in your DNA to do that. But what happens, what I find is that there's a suppression of emotion. There's suppressing, well, I don't want to disrupt, even though I'm disrupted, I don't want to disrupt everyone else, because what I have done has made everyone happy. And I end up sitting on the bed in the morning, 30 minutes before everybody else gets up, and I'm taking a breath and I'm trying to breathe and I'm experiencing an anxiety attack or experiencing depression. You're suppressing those emotions versus saying, listen, y'all, I can't do it today because of guilt and because of shame that might be attached to it. And then also, as I said, prioritizing others over yourself. And here's another good one. It's not good, but it's good to just kind of recognizing yourself and see if this is something that you do. Do you resist dependence? Do you resist help from others? You're denying yourself the help that someone will freely give because of your lived, learned, cultural, or ancestral DNA experiences that you carry with you, that they say, you can put that down because I'm here to help. And then another big one too, women, we do this all the time, and I find this with men too, is that you project or manifest some type of strength from somewhere. We super women and we're super men. And a lot of times it may work for you. Where you get it, it might be from God above. At the same time too, God allows for us to rest, So these are some things that I do see. And then succeeding without having the right resources. But again, that's the whole making lemonade, or taking lemons and making lemonade out of it. And somewhere or another, we're able to do it. But a lot of times there's a sacrifice somewhere that we have to figure out. So how do I overcome that, or how do we overcome that? There first has to be an acknowledgement that there is an imbalance with your personal, professional, and community life. And once you're able to freely, openly, willingly acknowledge and feel that you're in a safer space, or we call it a brave space, because it takes bravery from you, as well as those who you have served for a long time, to be brave enough to say, okay, unknowingly, maybe I've taken advantage of the access that I have to you, but it's a safe space and a brave space for you to be able to acknowledge, okay, I need some help. I need some support. I need to take some time for me.
That part, asking for help. Yeah, that's good. So again, I hope you all are taking some notes. I see Kimberly's helping out, putting some things in the chat. So thank you, Kimberly. And Felicia said, this is good information. She has a question that we'll ask later on. We see her question. And Leah said, that's good. I love that. But look, I'm scrolling up now. I don't know if she's saying that to the quote we quoted when you all said self-care, self-confrontation. I think you said that, Monica, at the very beginning. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's continue this conversation. And Joe, I just want to know, what are your thoughts around the cultural stigma surrounding mental health and self-care among Black men? Danielle touched on it just a little bit as far as Black women and Black men, or men and women of color, just that whole I'm strong, I don't need help, I can do it by myself. What are your thoughts around the cultural stigma surrounding mental health and self-care among Black men?
Well, I love what everyone shared earlier about the struggle of the strong, number one. And she talked about balance. And she also talked about beliefs and stories, right? Because we have stories. We all have these ideas and these concepts that we have developed from our youth. We are all consumers of expectations, whether we believe it or not. We're consumers of expectations of ourselves, or that has been generationally passed towards us and on us. And that's what we're living. But as Danielle spoke earlier, God did rest on 7 days. So let's live with the fact that when we talk about the African-American male experience, when we think about those things about strong, right? It's about the misunderstanding, the judgments. And many times we misunderstand what is going on with us emotionally. So we're not able to articulate really what we're dealing with. And then sometimes the lack of awareness of some of the symptoms that maybe we've dealt with in our family, our grandfathers, our fathers, our uncles, even sometimes our nephews. It's the lack of some of the symptoms that we may not even be aware of. And then the other thing that I think we're challenged with in African-American men and in our communities as a holistic aspect is resources. Where are the resources? Where do we go if we want to talk? Or is something wrong with me if I do talk?
Mm-hmm.
So we're taught to be that strong, the struggle of the strong, and self-reliant. That's what we're taught to do, to be. And then you have to deal with the systemic aspects of it. We've talked about this on so many different panels that we've had discussions about this, from police brutality. A lot of things have led to the silence of our trauma. That is the key, the silence of our trauma, because we don't know where to go and how to let it out, whether it's economical or whether it's from police brutality. And if you look at the generational aspects of us continually seeing things, whether it's digitally, it continues to cause stress and cause us to have trauma. And it has a long-term effect, and it continues to keep our mouths closed. So what do we need to do in order to shift in that area? What have I seen, and what do I think we need to get to, more or less? It's more training, more mental health resources that may be available through some of our social and organizational groups, our fraternities, sororities as well. And trying to make sure that people like Danielle and people like you, Tanya, and you, Monica, as well, when you talk about people that are representative of people that may have mental and emotional situations, we need to see an adequate amount of representation. People that look like us, people that struggle, that may have the same thoughts and ideologies, social and economical backgrounds that we've come from, or people in our family have come from. So it needs to be some more representation in the field of counseling and licensed therapists. And then I think the more thing is a holistic approach. And I think Danielle spoke to us last time we had a meeting in Greensboro. Not only just mental and emotional, but it has to be more financial, more career-centered, and more physically centered, because sometimes our physical health can also have an effect on our mental health. So I think we look at this whole thing a whole lot differently, and why it's because of that struggle of the strong she spoke about earlier. And then the key aspects of that self-reliant, we have to be so self-reliant. We can't show our vulnerabilities, not even to our spouses, not even to other men in some aspects. But I think we have to learn, and over time, it's beginning to change a little bit more and more and more. If you can see society as a whole, men are become more and more vulnerable, and they're actually able to speak about their feelings a lot more than what they once were in times past. And so I see it making a great move. But those are the things I look at it from a Black perspective and a Black culture perspective, from a self-care perspective. It's the holistic aspects we need, community-based programs. We need better representation. And we also need more training and more things and become more awareness of mental health and knowing who we can trust, whether that's speaking groups, talk groups, chat groups, teaching us how to deal with different arts. If we could deal with different arts in order to get our emotions out as well, whether that's painting, whether that's music, whether that's dance, other things to help us get some of the stress and the trauma out of us to help heal us.
So good, so good. And, just like you thanked us, I want to thank you because you're representing a Black male, a man of color, and your transparency and your vulnerability is contagious. So thank you so much. And I've got my notes from all of you. I know we are recording this, so we will be able to review it again. But I hear some marching orders in this, you all. I hear some marching orders, and so Leah did clarify in the chat that she was saying she loved when Joe spoke about saying that self-care is about bettering yourself so you can be better for others. So she wanted to provide a clarity. Thank you, Leah. I wasn't sure what that was attached to. And then Angela's said, loving this priceless information, needed to take a moment to tap in tonight. Yes, you deserve that moment, Angela. And we just really appreciate you being here. So let's keep the conversation going. I want to go to Monica. I want to I know you're starting to go into what you do with self-care, and it's so powerful, the movement that you've created. And I do want to talk about and ask you, what role does self-care play in managing the pressure of being a leader, being a founder of your organization? You're out there working. Many of us are working and leaders in our own right. And how does self-care play into managing the pressure of Brains Beauty Brilliance?
So self-care, its role is really it's the foundation of why. And so I start thinking about, what can I do, not for people, but where am I? I wake up in the morning, or even at night before I go to sleep. I think about my day, and I think about, did I properly take care of myself? Before I ask the question, did I love people okay? Did I love me appropriately today? And finding, and as Danielle was talking about, taking inventory, I take inventory of, how did I treat me today? And what was situations where I could have handled it better, not the individual other parties, but could have handled myself better. And so where am I experiencing anxiety? Sometimes when you're building your own brand, building an organization and creating community, there's anxiety. So, where are the opportunities that I can do my breathing exercises? Is there a place where I need to phone a friend, or I need to call my therapist or call my life coach and be able to have a 15-minute check-in to be able to handle that? And so the pressure of managing that is, how am I handling myself? Because Brains Beauty Brilliance is the brand of who Monica Yvonne is. Like, I am Monica Yvonne, Brains Beauty Brilliance. And in that, I do videos of self-talk, and I just share my self-talk on social media, so you can see how I'm handling my life transparently and in real time. And throughout time, you see my own growth and my own evolution. So I manage the pressure of building by treating myself well. My leadership abilities and my being a founder, and all the other things that sound great, right, and are great accomplishments. But it goes back to, what questions am I asking myself every day? Did I take time to calm down in a volatile situation if I'm in a toxic work environment? Like all the different things, I ask myself those questions. Monica, what do you need in this moment? Can you articulate it? Are you in soundness of mind, sound minds plug? Do I have a sound mind in this moment? Am I responding correctly to me? So I take full account and responsibility. And so in the self-care is, what do I need? Maybe it is a massage, or maybe it's I need to take a nap because I'm tired and I haven't rested well. Or maybe it is saying no to an event or something that I'm going to, or the list of different things, as Danielle has said, and again, taking inventory, or where is my creative outlet? For Joe, he talked about writing books. My creative outlet, honestly, is playing a game on a phone and turning my brain off, because my brain sometimes goes on 1,000. So I'll play Monopoly because simply because it does not require me to think, and simply because it's the only way that I have found to turn off my creative and turn off my mental that keeps me going, or turning off sometimes the things that I feel the Father shows me about the future. Sometimes you have to learn how to shut it down for the sake of resting your body. And that's how I manage the pressure of Brains Be Brilliance, because I am intentional and not being fraudulent. So I share my story with others, and this is what I do every day.
And, that's so powerful, because even in that vulnerability, you have a different calling, right? So the light is on, whatever, because you're very transparent in your posts and everything. It doesn't matter, this is me, right? This is me. And so there is that added pressure. And I think even what you said about the breathing exercises, the things that, and I love the question. And, I think we all should write this on a selfie. I mean, not a selfie, a sticky, excuse me, and put it on our computer, our wall, our mirror, whatever. But did I love me appropriately today? How did I treat me today? Wow. That's good stuff right there. That is so good. And we just have to figure this out. And even with the Monopoly, like no judgment zone, hashtag no judgment zone. Like I can't be like, Monica, put that phone down. If that's what works for her. As advocates, like we have to support each other and know where we each find our own peace, where we each are able to take a moment and breathe and unwind and just not think about something. Because a lot of times you're right, those ideas are coming and you're thinking and you're strategizing and and we just have to relax, just turn it off, right? Just turn it off. Because trust me, I'm a believer, we all believers on this stage, and it's gonna get done, right? Because God's got us,
right.
and
That's
we don't have to, but a lot of times we put all the pressure on ourselves. So Danielle, how do we normalize these conversations? Joe talked about, we need to normalize these conversations. We need to be able to come together, even, the men, the women, like we need to have these conversations, even with our children. Like I think so many times, we have to start pouring into them early about these things, right? It's not like, okay, now you're 18, we can talk about this. No, but if we build a culture, like even Joe with his book collection, he's starting that early on, and that will be powerful as they grow, older and become of age citizens in the world. So how can we start to normalize conversations about self-care and mental wellness? Because listen, when you get your hair braided or you get a hair extensions and all that, that thing takes all day. That's not self-care. Right. Sit there all day doing these things or getting lashes, because our younger culture, like the whole beauty is a huge thing. Oh, it's the presentation, it's the outside, not necessarily that inside, right? Because they believe that outside is going to carry that inside, but it doesn't work that way. We know that. So what are some ways that we can start to normalize conversations about self-care and mental wellness?
Well, I want to say that platforms like this is one of the ways. I want to go back to what you said for maybe the younger generation. When we talk about self-care, sometimes it's packaged in, like you said, the hair or the nails, or a nice fade, or number 2, or whatever the guys get. But I want to say this, and I said this the last time when we were in the panel at Bennett College, is that you know, again, take an inventory of even how you're self-caring. If your if your ability to be financially sound is not the best, then your self-care might not be to pay for a brunch every weekend, or to get lash extensions or hair, or the newest tennis shoes or clothes. Because at the end of the day, again, you deplete your finances for something that's very temporal. If your self-care, or if your challenges with communication, or if your challenges with being socially apt is not something that, you know, you can do to express, I need help or support, you might need to invest something that's free. Time, your time, invest your time in learning how to communicate. And that's the self-care, and learning how to communicate. I need support, I need help, I'm depleted. You know, even when it comes to marriage, or when it comes to just fidelity to yourself, or to something that you have committed to, you cannot do self-care one-on-one when there's something or someone that you need to be committed to make an agreement, to make a covenant, when it comes to in the pursuit of self-care of something that you're in covenant with, whether it's a job, whether it's your spouse, business plan. Those are the types of things where you really do have to look at the way that you view self-care. So it's not just a financial, material thing, but it's something that will lead you on the path of functionality in all of those areas. Y'all know I always say mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, professionally, socially, financially, all of the elites. You know, I always say that. Take an inventory of where you are when it comes to self-care in those areas. And if they are depleted, those are areas you need to work on, and you don't need to be at the brunch. Okay, so I'm gonna get off my soapbox for that. But I also wanna say again, Tanya, that platforms like these really do help. Writing books from an experience that you had with your son helps for the next generation of young men. Building a brand that you may have initially started for yourself, but people see themselves in you, like Monica, that your trial is a testimony, and it becomes a triumph for someone else to see. So we're not just doing these things for ourselves. We can be trailblazers. And another thing about trailblazers is somebody had to blaze the trail. So just think of the wild before you. But if you're given a vision, or if you're given a calling, or if you are supposed to serve, you'll have the tools to be able to blaze that trail and move those things out of the way for those who come behind you. But also, I want to really stress, as Monica said, and we've already kind of talked about the culture of our past, and just having to do things because we've thought ancestrally they did it that way, so we'll do it that way. It's really good to sit down and ask the questions, as Monica said, ask the older generation, because they may be in a space where they tell you what happened, and then you go one step further. How do you think that would work now? Well, I don't know, baby, it might not work now. Maybe I can show you, big mama or grandma or auntie or uncle. Maybe we can partner together, bringing the old and the new together and creating something new. So asking the generation before you. Safe spaces, brave spaces. We like to say, find your tribe, find your crew. Like, this is my tribe. You know, the SoundMinds family is my tribe, it's my crew. We have a vested interest in mental health. So search and seek out those who have vested interests in your self-care to see you get back onto the path of functionality. And then always, I'm going to tell you, I think everybody needs therapy. Even therapists have therapists. I'm also in therapy just for work-life balance, that same balance that I told you all about before: professional balance, family balance, community balance, desires of my heart balance, and being able to have a sounding board of someone who is neutral, because my family too close to my situations. They're going to tell me what they possibly want me to hear versus what I need to hear. So, you know, that's a start. That's a start.
That's a great start. So good. So many notes. Love the fact that you did some alliteration. I love that with the T's. You said your trial becomes a testimony and a triumph for someone else. That was good. Thank you, Danielle, for that. I want to ask you, Joe, what are some self-care practices that have become non-negotiable for you? I think that's so important. And how do you maintain them even in times of stress?
Well, I have several. When you talk about writing was number one, right? So writing my children's books have been very cathartic for me throughout times. It helps me to get out some of my emotions, some of the stories that I have, and some of the experiences I've seen kids that I've been through myself. Putting them into those writings has been very wonderful for me. So it's been very cathartic. Also, meditation, right? Taking time to meditate, separating my thoughts from my emotions, as I talked about, even from the meditation perspective, breathing, because I believe that our breath is a bridge between our heart and our mind. And many times we don't stop and we don't breathe. If you think
Wait,
about
stop, rewind, say that line one more time for us. You believe our
breath is the
breath.
bridge between our heart and our mind. And that's what I wrote about my book about Ernest's Bridge, if I will. That bridge represents that bridge between our heart and our mind is our breath. And one of the 8 tenets I speak about so clearly is about stopping and breathing. So how many times a day do you stop and do you breathe? Or do we pant throughout the day? We pant, but do you really breathe? And so that's one thing I take time to consciously do to make sure that I'm breathing, that I'm present, because that brings me back into the present moment. And that's part of that meditation. And the other thing I do is anyone is on, as well as a diet, because I think what we eat also plays a big role in how we feel mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. So I really try to curtail my diet. I really try to eat more fruits, berries, things that can kind of increase my blood flow. Other things I do, Tanya, from a self-care perspective, I've done oxygen deprivation tanks. Why did I do something like that? Does that make sense? Well, I believe in increasing my oxygen levels to my brain because of neurological pathways, right? Because Herb's law talks about neurons that stick together, that fire together, they wire together. So I was trying to figure out new ways to try to change my thinking patterns, creating new brain ways, new pathways, getting more oxygen to my brain as well. So those are things I've done for myself. And sleep patterns. I think sleep is one of the most vital things. We spend money on a lot of things, but yet and do we not spend money on our beds and our pillows and the places that we spend the majority of our time. How good are your pillows? How good do you sleep at night? Do you have a regulated time in which you choose to go to bed? Because understanding circadian rhythms is very important for mental health as well. And getting the proper amount of sleep was really good for me because at one time I wasn't sleeping. When I had my panic attacks, I couldn't sleep. I had so many ruminating thoughts that my mind would run constantly at night, constantly at night. I would take Benadryl or NyQuil or something just to try to knock me out to go to sleep. And so I was self-medicating myself because I couldn't turn it off. But then I also learned through time, I had to learn how to regulate myself, knowing when to kind of pull my evening down, starting around 7:30, 8 o'clock. When do I start winding down? So now I have my circadian rhythm set. So every night I go to bed at the same exact time. I make sure my room is very dark. I make sure I have white noise. I do all these things from a self-care perspective to make me show up better for others. Because if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't show up for others. And then those are some of the relaxation things I've done. But also I do Tai Chi. I do a little bit of yoga, but not a lot of yoga. But I also do a lot of cardiovascular work, exercising and running. And to such a degree that I tried to compete in the USA track and field competition for people that were my age and higher. And I ended up hurting my Achilles heel, but I was trying to continue to compete at higher levels. And then I developed more hobbies. I developed woodworking hobbies, things to take my mind away from thoughts and thinking, right? Because we spend a lot of time thinking about thinking. That's the problem. When you're thinking about thinking is when you get in trouble. A thought is a pure thing, but thinking about thinking is where we get into a lot of trouble. So I would do a lot of woodwork, where that was carpentry work, a lot of painting around my own home because it helped me to focus. So those are things that I've continually done. Also, counseling was one of my number one things. And one of the characters in my children's book, his name is Ernest. That was my counselor. That was the person that changed my life, that put me on this course. And so I use his wisdom that I kind of gleaned from throughout my children's books, that he's always the wisdom piece to how to handle emotional and challenging things in your life. And I think Monica spoke about it earlier. I know I'm giving you guys a lot of details here.
It's good. No,
You
this
guys
is
can take this stuff.
good. This is good.
A digital detox. She spoke about detoxing digital things, whether that was the internet, whether that's anything socially, whether there's any talk shows. I wanted to make sure I was pure within myself. So I detoxed myself from a lot of things every quarter just to not deal with anything technologically. So that calms my nerves because sometimes these things push our dopamine levels and we keep going and we keep scrolling, we keep scrolling and we keep scrolling and you don't know what you're actually burning. You're burning. So in order to keep my mental health, because then that'll feed you to the next moment, because we'll take one moment to the next moment if you're not careful. So you have to make sure that you're not taking emotional things from one moment to the next moment. And that's why I would do the detox. And also time management. I try to make sure I structure my time, because doing work, family, spousal things, you have to have time management to make sure everyone gets the appropriate amount of time, but you also still continue to get the appropriate amount of time for yourself. So those are things that I lean into. They're non-negotiables. And my kids know, my family know, this is kind of how I kind of live my life, because I learned something that, and that's a great quote by Henry Thoreau that talks about how not until we have lost do we begin to understand ourselves. Not until I lost something, I didn't begin to understand myself. And now I understand myself, and I understand how to separate the stories and the thinking from just thoughts. So that's what I do.
Look, I'm gonna second what Leah said, read in the chat. She said, Joe better preach. No, that's powerful. Thank you. Thank you. Angela said in the chat, absolutely, diet is extremely important. Your gut is your second brain and affects our emotions. So thank you. Felicia put a hand clap for you in the in her with the emoji in her name. So thanks, Felicia. Yes, this is good. This is good, you all. I'm telling you, I hope that you're taking notes. We have a dynamic panel tonight and they are pouring it out. And I'm going to segue to you, Monica. And I want to just kind of get personal, even with Danielle, not just from her being our professional on the panel, but I'm going to segue off of Joe's question and shift a little bit. What are your non-negotiables, Monica? What are your non-negotiables for you? And how do you maintain them even in times of stress?
My non-negotiable is self-care Saturday. Self-care Saturday started out with me just not prioritizing myself. I met with a life coach. The life coach challenged me and asked me the questions, how are you taking care of yourself? And then she said, well, what day of the week can you dedicate? And I said, I can dedicate Saturday. And so then eventually Saturdays is just what I became known on social media to do, #Saturday. So I would create a video and talk to myself and post it, and that would help others. But it was still created with the intention from me. So my non-negotiable is Saturday. So on Saturday, I do things that feel me, that make me feel great. One of the things that I do is I support Black women, Black women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, local-owned businesses within my community. And that fills me just having that relational value with the owners and asking them questions. Are you in the Black? Are you in the red? But whatever I'm doing on Saturday, it helps me. And so those conversations, I have found that if those businesses created community for me, I found that those were safe spaces. I think sometimes we're taught that safe spaces can only happen in your house or only happen at church or your assembly. And I found that safe spaces were already in my community. All I had to do was walk down the street. And so my non-negotiable is that Saturday, and outside of Saturday, my non-negotiables are, does this benefit me? Is this a part of my legacy and my value? Right now, I'm only investing in things that are going to create legacy. That's where my purpose and focus is for me. But if this is not a value add, and it's not going to create something that's going to be lasting, that's going to speak beyond me not being in the room, then it's not my investment. So I'll turn down an opportunity because it's not the right opportunity. So my non-negotiables is making sure that I do not align myself with something that's outside of my values and outside of my purpose, because that's going to take and pull something from me, one, that I don't have, and number two, that's not meant for me. And so my non-negotiables is my Saturday, and anything that I know and I've matured and evolved into knowing is outside of my purpose.
Self-care Saturday. That's good, Monica. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Danielle, Kimberly put in the chat, a therapist needs a therapist, right? And a therapist needs some non-negotiable self-care. So what are your non-negotiables for taking care of Danielle?
So my non-negotiables is not necessarily a day, but I like how Monica said, having or attaining the maturity. For me, it's having or attaining the maturity, the assertiveness, and the bravery to say no. So when I say no, after being a therapist and hearing other people's challenges and issues and problems, after going out into the community and doing workshops, after doing platforms such as this and other platforms where you're constantly pouring out, my non-negotiable is not when my cup is empty, because just very short, I can say that back in 2019 or 2018, my cup was dry. And because of that, because of giving 100% to work, 100%, not 25, 100% to work, 100% to church, 100% to relationship, and leaving none for myself, I experienced stress-induced anxiety. And I didn't know what was happening to me. Also, because I was a therapist, I should have seen the signs, right? But I know now the feeling, and my body tells me, along with my mind, my psychosomatic reactions, meaning the mind and the body, they're either connecting or not. When I begin to feel that, everyone knows around me, y'all don't want me to go back to 2018, do you? Okay, so that's a non-negotiable for me, but having the bravery enough and assertive enough to say no. Because when you're the eldest child, I don't know how many oldest children we have on this platform tonight, or when you have been given the responsibility, sometimes you feel like you can't say no. But my non-negotiable is when I begin to feel that I am out of alignment, physically, mentally, emotionally, medically, all of those alleles again with myself. That is a time at any given time. I wish I could just say Saturday, but any given time. Those who do care and do love and who saw what I went through, again, my trial was a testimony that became a triumph, but what they saw what I went through, they don't want me to go back there. And so that for me is a no. I can't do it right now. Let's circle back around to it, or get somebody else to do it. And that's also hard to say too sometimes. Get somebody else to do it. But being okay with that. And once I say it, once I put my foot down, that's it.
That's good. Yep. Just if somebody can't do it, and sometimes things just won't get done, right? And it's okay, because we want it done, but that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be done or done our way, right? I always say it's going to get done with or without you. It may not get done the way you want it done, but that's that's what you've got to step in and take control of your thoughts and how you're feeling about certain things. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we have some people that put in the chat of what are their non-negotiables. Brenda said she says no, cutting back on the demands placed on her. And Felicia said, I'm the oldest and my body lets me know when I need to self-evaluate. Yes, your body will always show up, whether you, if you don't see it, it's eventually going to tell you the truth. And whether you want to believe it or not, you won't have a choice but to sit down for a minute. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So as we get ready to close, I do want to say, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We're going to tackle some questions that we have, as well as if you want to come on and just give some comments to our panelists tonight. We just ask that you turn your camera on so that we can bring you up. We can't spotlight you on stage with us when your camera's off. So that's the only thing we do ask. But Joe, I just want to ask you, as we get ready to close, how do you see self-care evolving in the future, in the context of advocacy and community well-being? Have you thought about that? What do you think is happening? I know you said earlier you saw men becoming more vulnerable, things shifting, but as far as the whole self-care movement, I know you got some great notes. We do need to find out what brand pillows you use too, if you could put that in the chat for us. But what do you see happening in our communities that will help us take better care of ourselves?
I think what we're doing tonight is part of the future, right? SoundMinds. People are taking more ownership and getting more platforms and getting out here and discussing more things from mental health, relationships. A lot of different things are taking place because of what we have access to now, right? At one time, we didn't have access to all these airways. So I think that is where the future is going, and more people are beginning to step into that stream to help people from a mental, emotional, and psychological perspective. So I see it going great places. Even companies and corporations, they really lean more into mental health, well-being. They have programs in many of the major corporations that give people the time to take a break. do self-evaluations, volunteer advocacy work in the communities for whatever things they want to volunteer for. So I see it on the rise more and more, because if you think about it, even books are being published even more now, and being more honest and more forthright when you talk about what is going on in America from just our youth. That's why I'm really into that stream of the youth, because there's a great book that was published called The Anxious Generation. I don't know if you guys had any time to read that book, but that book talks a lot about what is happening, what is taking place with our youth in America, just due to technology alone itself, and how many that how the rate of depression, anxiety, suicide is exponentially on a rise, just due to these little things that we have in our hands, that people use those to bring up their children and not themselves doing it. So that has been a major kicking point now, that a lot of schools are going to cell phone free environments. So I see it moving very rapidly, because it's just like smoking, right? Back in the day, we're all part of that smoking generation, where it was cool back in the day. Our parents thought it was cool to smoke back in the day. But as time went on, they realized that smoking caused something that we didn't know it caused. And so now what we're doing is figuring out that some of this technology that we've had, that we've given our kids so early, it's going to have and is having some issues. So that has brought more resources, more funding, and more eyes towards mental health and those things, not just only in our communities, but broad communities as a whole. So that's why I see it moving to in the future.
Excellent, excellent. And it's so true. Just the fact that corporations are getting more involved and taking time and bringing in speakers to share, and that volunteerism, because there's definitely something that feels good when you volunteer. You're making a difference in the community. So I love that. So good, so good. And I want to get that book, The Anxious Generation. I have not heard of that. So thank you for bringing that to the stage tonight as well, and to our conversation. Now, Monica, the individual who is struggling with putting themselves first, just grabbing that idea and running with the fact that they should prioritize themselves. And when they do that, it's not selfish.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to that person?
The advice that I would give to that person is that your dreams do not come true, and the promises do not manifest if you do not take care of yourself and put yourself first for the right reasons. And that the right reasons are not other people, but the right reason is yourself. And the love for yourself. And so don't let your dream diminish simply because you believed a lie or a false statement that self-care means that you're being selfish. So my encouragement is to take on a new language of worthiness and take on a new language of love, which keeps you at the forefront of you, because you are important. And the byproduct is how others get the benefit from the work that you've done on yourself. But that's secondary to you valuing yourself for you. I will also encourage them to know that even people who love you will put you in a situation where they should be more important to you. And I want you to know that that may be a boundary that you have to set with individuals, even family, that will try to take you off the path of loving yourself first, because they don't get to have any benefit if it's not really present there in the first place, which requires you to do the work. So that's my encouragement, is to change your language and to know that what you see and desire in your future is dependent on the decision that you make to take care of yourself for you today.
Amen. Thank you. That's good. Yep, that's good. A language of worthiness and a language of love. Danielle, how do we create a culture of self-care that's accessible and sustainable in communities where we don't have the resources? They're limited, or we do have them, but they're very limited. What is our responsibility? What is my responsibility? What is Joe's responsibility? Monica's responsibility? What is Angela's responsibility? Brenda's, Felicia's, Yolanda's, anyone on this in this room tonight with us, as well as anyone that may be listening. What is our responsibility? What do you believe is our responsibility to create a culture of self-care that's accessible and sustainable in our communities?
So I believe it's exactly the word that you use, community. We right now are a part of community. We're being enlightened. We're being empowered. We're receiving information. And this is knowledge that we can then take back. It's kind of like the ripple effect. You throw a stone in the water and then it kind of ripples out. Well, maybe we need to be that stone, or maybe we need to be that pillar, to be the ones that carry, you know, a little bit of information and knowledge. And then also, again, going back to what we said, even bring the generations past, the generation before, that may have worked then. What worked then, what can be applied now, and what can we use to move forward? Also, the idea of community where there are limited or challenges with resources. I still believe in, there's this one little lady in my sister's neighborhood. She's been there since the 70s. She can tell you everything that has happened from the 70s up until now, from her little house on the street corner. She can tell you, she carries the stories of what worked and what keeps the street going. It's a quiet little street when everything else around may be in disarray. But she can tell you there are certain pillars within the small communities that might not have access to local resources for mental health services, but there is something that she carries and holds that has kept everyone together, that has kept stories going. And from that point on too, you can then create certain days of the week. So just for an example, you know, Wellness Wednesdays, or you might have Worship Wednesdays at your church, or Mindfulness Mondays, or Music Mondays. I mean, if you're from the country like my family is, everybody gets together at grandma's house, and on Sunday, you know what to expect. And for some people, that is the care that they need, the community that they need, you know, touching and agreeing one with another that they need, that they might not receive throughout the entire week. Now, when it comes to being able to access additional resources, try contacting your local officials. Try, if you have access to internet, just whatever questions you have. I think we've already said it. Sometimes it just starts with a question. Typing in a question and finding out what is available to you, doing the research, and then again, connecting with those like us who are here on this particular platform, because I have an expectation that after we leave here today, each one is going to tell one, who's going to tell one, who's going to tell one.
So good. I love that. Yes. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Danielle. We're going to segue. We do have a couple questions, and if you want to come up and share or ask, make a comment to our panelists, we would love to bring you up. Just turn your camera on so that we can see you, and we'll spotlight you on the panel with us. And again, this is a safe space. This is a SoundMinds Mental Health Awareness and Solutions Conference event. We always believe in safe spaces. So there's no judgment. We have the opportunity. So bring your question out. So right now, you all can decide who wants to take this question. Each one of you can take one question. And so I'm going to give this one to Danielle. What is a myth of self-care?
Well, we talked about one of them today. Well, self-care is not selfish. That's a myth, you know, that, oh, you're taking care of yourself through the lens of, you know, self-fulfilling and self-righteousness. No, it's not that. You're preparing yourself, you're refilling your cup, you're putting yourself in position that if, again, you happen to serve in a specific capacity, that you can do that. Another myth we've already talked about more on the realistic side of things. Look at all the alleles in your life: mental, emotional, physical, financial, social, all of the alleles, professional, and any other ones that you can think of. And if you are out of balance in that, you need to take care of that for yourself, because this is the makeup of you. So if you're financially sound, but you may have some challenges with mental, emotional, or psychological challenges, finances is not where you need to look at right now. But you might want to do some therapeutic work, or some mentorship work, or some counseling. So those are two myths that I can think of. Self-care is not selfish. And then look at other areas in your life that are depleted where you can fill them.
Right.
Thank you. Joe, this one's for you. How do you approach and enlighten Black men to recommend and persuade them to go to see a therapist when they may see therapy as a sign of weakness or don't feel comfortable talking to a stranger? Also, what are tools to find a therapist that's best for you? Where did you start?
Wow, that's a very big question right there. So number one, how do I begin to talk to men to encourage them to go to seek help, mental help,
So it's
emotional help?
I think it's someone that's wanting to know, they want your feedback. How do you approach and enlighten Black men to recommend and persuade them to go to see a therapist when they may see therapy as a sign of weakness or don't
Okay.
feel comfortable talking to a stranger?
In times past, how I've approached Black men in that situation is I get them to understand how they're thinking and how they're feeling. That is the journey of it, beginning of the whole process is what are you thinking and how are you feeling and why do you think this way and why are you feeling this way? And then once they can able to dissect that, then they can understand why they may be off board or may not be on board. Because one thing we talk about Black men or us sometimes, there's two things that we're dealing with sometimes in our thinking. Is work or money? In some way or another, it's work or money. And that's a problem with our thinking. And so once you could get the category of what they're thinking, whether it's about work or whether it's about money, and then you can start to begin to help them to navigate where they need to have some help in some areas to help get some enlightenment on some areas. So that's the process I would go through, and I have gone through with some of the people that are my employees at my company in South Carolina. What are they thinking? Why are you thinking it? What led you to this thinking? And how you handling things emotionally, because sometimes the emotions will show where they are mentally. They're very irritable. They get very snappy, very quick. And that lets you know that they're on a stress load. Their stress loads management is at the high end. So now they need to back off some of the things in their life that is causing stress. And most of the time it's going to be money or work problems. Then you have relationships at the back end, right? So helping them understand those three things that affects our thinking and those problems that way is number one. And number two is how do you begin to now, how did I find my counselor, right? Through research, through just going online, trying to find people that I connected with, that I found some commonality with. And it was like an interviewing process. So don't be afraid to interview people, and don't be afraid, as we talked about boundaries as well. If it's not a fit, it's not a fit. If you don't connect with them, you just don't connect with them. It's not, don't take it personal. This is for your own mental health and your emotional health and your well-being. So you have to find someone that you feel comfortable expressing yourself to and talking to. And the other aspect is when my first day in session, I didn't do a lot of talking because I'm trying to figure out why am I really here? Because I think I still kind of got it all together. But over time, you begin to trust. You begin to really open yourself up. So the problem that we have is the first step. And we have so many different ideas about what it is, as the stigma of getting counseling. I'm not crazy. That's the first thing most people think about. Something's wrong with you. No, it's something right about you that you're actually going to do this journey. That's what it is. It's something right about you because you've actually opened up the hood to say, I want more. I see myself differently. So look at it from that perspective. And that's kind of how I talk to a lot of men as well. There's something right about you. There's something good about you, because my counselor would always tell me, and I still use this to today. Are you being good to yourself? Are you being good to yourself? Even the negative thoughts, the negative conversations. Take the time to be good to yourself. And so go talk to someone and be good to yourself. It doesn't hurt to talk to someone. We'll talk to a pastor. This is how I talk to them. We'll talk to a pastor. We even talk to our girlfriends, our spouses sometimes, but we still won't make that other move because you're basically having those conversations with people that are just not there to really help you, to kind of help you, to kind of give you some tools to manage some of these things. So it's just now taking the next step. So just go be good to yourself and just trust the process, interview the process, find someone that fits with you, and just trust it. That's kind of how I do it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Our next question, this one's for Monica. How do you recognize the difference between unhealthy withdrawal and self-care when the naps become too frequent or you get too attached to scrolling social media instead of interacting?
Wow, what a question. So how you can differentiate is when isolation turns into depression, when your retreating turns into negative care, because resting will make you feel, should make you feel rejuvenated and refreshed. Too much resting will make you feel sluggish and it will deplete you of strength. And so then you're into a position of, I'm sleeping, but I feel like I can't get enough rest. And so that means that there's no energy poured back into you, which comes from being around people or being in community. And so when scrolling on social media becomes an addiction, meaning that you run to social media to get away, but when you come back, you do not have the tools to handle the problem or face the challenges that you're experiencing in your day-to-day, or maybe in that season of your life. That's how you know that it's on the negative. So things have to be done in moderation. So my social media is done in moderation. Your time around people is done in moderation. So whether you're an introvert or whether you're an extrovert, or whether you're like me, an ambivert, meaning that I'm very introverted probably when I come home, but to everyone else, when you see me in public, I appear to be extremely extroverted. I need to have both and a healthy balance of both. But when you're not balanced, your equilibrium is going to be off. So if your equilibrium is off, then you have to ask yourself the question, am I treating me properly? So do you feel depressed? Do you feel tired? Why? When was the last time you went outside and got fresh air? Because sometimes self-care doesn't always equate to being around people. It could just simply mean changing your environment. You could have went to Starbucks, or you can go to a mall and not purchase anything. What is the change of your environment and the change of the scenery that will change your mood in a positive direction?
Thank you. That's good. Thank you so much. And I just want to say too, you know, if you're sleeping too much, please go see your doctor, because it could be some other things. And so make sure that you're logging if you need to, just to see those patterns, because it could be a depletion somewhere else. Please, we care about our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health. So thank you. Danielle, this next question is for you. How do you as the therapist not take on anyone else's energy when you are the go-to person to discuss their problems? We all know how energy can transfer without us knowing it. Sometimes I find myself having to constantly release that heavy energy.
That's a really good question. And I tip my hat off and take my hat off to being able to be trained on how to understand transference and countertransference. Basically, when someone tells you, it's almost like you absorb not only what they're saying, but it's almost like the feelings that they carry manifests itself even into you. But it does take training. You know, as a therapist, you get the training to understand when you are feeling a certain way, where you have taken on, like literally taken on or put it on your back, the challenges or issues that a person has given you, person or people. But it's also about understanding you first, understanding your body, understanding what triggers you. If listening to one friend is okay, but two for that day is too much, listen to your body. Listen to and feel out, okay, there's a rise in my temperature, I'm heating up. Or there is this desire, this strong desire to retreat from this person when I see them coming. Or this conversation has caused my mind to wander and to go in places that I don't need to take ownership of this thing. So I'll give you an analogy. It's like you're at the airport and you see your luggage. You see your luggage. You get your own luggage. That is your luggage. You take ownership of your luggage. You happen to see, for some reason or another, there's one little lone luggage on this spinabout thing. And out of the kindness of your heart, you take the luggage. No one's claimed it, but you figure, I'll take it with me and I'll bring it back to the airport tomorrow. But when you open that luggage up, it's in disarray. You have now taken ownership of something that was not yours to begin with. What you could have done using this analogy is seen the luggage and taken it to the reference, taking it to the lost and found. It is okay to assist, but then have the appropriate resources for the person or people in order to get them back to the path of functionality. Two things can happen. You have helped without taking ownership of what they have. And then you could feel proud of yourself for being in the position to serve or to help or to assist without taking on all of those things that may manifest itself. So that is the analogy. But yeah, just honestly, y'all, just, you know, take a temperature check. If it's not for you, it's not for you. And be okay with it not being for you. That's the thing. You have to be okay with, and trust me, they'll find somebody else to put it on. They'll find someone else. They'll find somebody else. So just be okay with it, y'all. Be okay.
It's true.
Thank you. And that question was from Leah. And I do want to say too, that I love the fact that you use that word, Leah. You said, sometimes I find myself having to constantly release that heavy energy. At least you acknowledge that you need to release that heavy energy, because
Keep that baggage there. Leave it at the
sometimes
baggage
we
plate.
carry
Somebody else
it,
will
we
get it.
carry it. And so, yeah. So we have 5 more minutes left. We have one more question. I want to, if we could just answer this, give you 60 seconds. We're going to end on time. We value your time. And the last question I want to ask is, what about the thought that self-care is knowing that it is okay to be selfish sometimes? Taking care of yourself in order to take care of others, doesn't that defeat the purpose to put you in a cycle? I'm gonna leave that one on the floor. Anyone can take that
No,
one. I'll repeat it one more time. What about the thought that self-care is knowing that it's okay to be selfish sometimes? Taking care of yourself in order to take care of others, doesn't that defeat the purpose and put you in a cycle?
well, I think we have to change our language. I think we need to stick with self-care, self-inventory. Even Monica, what was it again? Self-confrontation. It's okay to change the language first, because when you begin to change the language, your lens and your view is different. The reality is that some people do have to be that matriarch. Some people do have to be that big sibling that has to take care of their little siblings. Some people do, some men do have to carry household finances and work 2 and 3 jobs. That is the reality of life. But it is also a way that we can view and change the language to say, okay, you know, dad needs a Sunday to watch the game uninterrupted. If he don't get anything else, let him watch the game, let him watch the Eagles or Commanders or whoever.
Okay.
Let him just let him do that. Because that might be the only time for rejuvenation, for refilling. And then he has to go and do that over and over again to provide and to support the family. And so I think that it might be a cycle, but if we look at it and we change our language and our lens and our view of it, the cycle works. The cycle works. The spin cycle for washing your clothes works. It is a cycle. You need to utilize it to rinse those things that have been soiled, right? And you use it over and over and over again. It works. So find something that works for you, change the language and your lens.
Now, Angela, you had your camera up. You want to come on and make a comment real quick? Or I didn't mean to not call you out. I didn't see that your camera was on. Okay, so let me bring you up with us. We're gonna bring you up so you can say what you want to say. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to thank you, my sister. I love you. And I just wanted to thank the panelists because, you know, it takes a lot to be very candid and also to be able to share your own life experiences. And I appreciate that. And I just wanted to say it was awesome being here tonight. It was my first time tapping in, but I plan on tapping in much more. And I just wanted to say thank you.
And what's one takeaway for you, Angela?
I think one of the best takeaways, I wrote so many notes. Oh my God. Okay, wait a
Okay.
minute. Let me go back to my journal real quick. Um, oh, well, I wanted to focus more. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My phone's about to
Oh,
die.
you're fine.
I want to focus more on my having non-negotiables,
Mhm.
and that saying no in serving, we must serve ourselves. So we got to
Okay.
serve ourselves first in order to be able to serve others, right?
That's right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe with the storm.
Okay, ciao.
So yes, so I just want to thank you each. Thank everyone who's been attending. You know, we hope, like Angela, you have some takeaways that you will start to implement as soon as we get off this virtual meeting tonight. Joe, Monica, Danielle, thank you as always. Our SoundMinds family is powerful, and I do appreciate your vulnerability. I honor your time, and we just really, I love you all, you know, and we are committed to doing the work. And like Danielle said, this is our community, and we will continue to have more conversations and more and more and more. And so I do want to thank Kimberly SIMMONS, who's our program lead. She's on the back end. She's been managing the back end. So thank you, Kimberly, for stepping into that role for us tonight. Thank you again. This has been our conversation. Self-care is not selfish, prioritizing your well-being. And I do want to invite you to follow SoundMinds Conference on Instagram and Facebook if you are not currently doing so. And please join our mailing list. We have a newsletter called Advocacy Matters. So we want you to help us connect with us. We want to grow. We want to expand our reach. And our 5th annual conference will be July 10th, 2025 in Philadelphia. Danielle said those Eagles. So we are definitely excited about that. And please go to soundmindsconference.com, scroll down. You'll see where you can subscribe to our mailing list. And please remember, most importantly, each one of us wants you to know that you are not alone. If you are going through something right now and you need to talk to somebody, please do. Kimberly is putting some resources in the chat for you. And also, I just want to stay connected. You know, Joe, Monica, and Danielle are on Instagram. If you all want to put your handles in the chat for people to reach out to you if they just want to ask you a question or just want to stay connected to you, please do so if you'd like. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Together we grow. Mercedes is on. I see Mercedes in the room, and her passion. Whenever I say this, I think of Mercedes. Together we win.
Together we win.
And so it's important that we win through our transparency, through our conversation, through asking for help, through not feeling like we have to carry it alone, and checking on each other and asking each other questions, open-ended questions, so that we don't just assume and ignore things around us, because it all impacts each one of us, and it all is rooted in love. So again, thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.